Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Complexity Weekend, July 2022 Heartbeat. We're going to have about 20 minutes of cybernetic music by Michael Garfield, Future Fossils. Then we'll pick up with an organizer's introduction, giving some overview on Complexity Weekend and on what's going to be happening at this Heartbeat. Then, in the second half of the live stream, we'll be working interactively on a Jamboard, and then the rest of the first interval of the Heartbeat and all of the second interval are going to be interactive on Gather. So, the link to the program and to the Jamboard are in the YouTube live chat. I look forward to seeing what you write there. Enjoy the next 20 minutes of music, and see you very soon for the organizer introduction. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the July 2022 Complexity Weekend Heartbeat. I'm Daniel. I'm one of the co-organizers for this Heartbeat, and I'll be on the live stream today. So if you're watching live, thanks a lot for joining. Hope this is informative and also a nice introduction or a re-welcoming to Complexity Weekend. In this live stream, it's going to be the first hour of the Heartbeat, and the first section of the live stream is going to be a welcome to Complexity Weekend and some information on upcoming events. Then we'll talk about the July 2022 Heartbeat specifically. We'll go over the program and so on. And then in the last half of this hour, we'll have an interactive Jamboard. The Jamboard link has been shared in the YouTube live chat, and feel free to write any questions or comments during the stream in that chat. So welcome everyone to the Complexity Weekend Community of Practice. I'll go briefly over some history and initial conditions. The first Complexity Weekend was in person in May 2019, and since then we've been operating online as a global community of practice. We've had two cohort-based weekends during 2020, during 2021, and currently we've had one of our weekends in April 2022, and September 2022 is coming up. We'll talk more about that soon. Each of these weekends we've been developing on the structures. As we always say, Complexity Weekend is a complex system, and so things have been elaborating and pruning back, and people come in and out, and that's all been amazing. Another way to look at how Complexity Weekend works is in terms of the community energy and the oscillations in that energy, and then that as a backdrop or a context or a source or a cause and a consequence for the complexity journey that you and your team are on. So here we have in the green line, the community energy peaking towards the weekends. Those weekends are when there are continuous activity throughout a weekend. No one joins for every single hour of activity, but some people do join for many hours, others just drop in and out. That's when we have these energy peaks. In the months between the in the months between the weekends, the other 10 months per year, like the Heartbeat months, the smaller peaks are the Heartbeat that you're listening to and about to participate or rewatching now. And those use a lot of the same tooling and a lot of the same people, ideas, facilitated session approaches, and so on. So it gives a great taste as well as a great re-welcoming back and an opportunity to reconnect for those who have already participated in Complexity Weekend. And in the background is the continuation of your complexity journey, your relationships, and your team. In the Jamboard, we'll also be exploring a little bit this multi-scale developmental aspect of complexity. And it's one thing that differentiates a community of practice from, say, a community of interest, which is that it's not the only way to participate in Complexity Weekend, but we try to offer ample opportunities to form and seed and to scaffold teams, whether that's a team that you're bringing in, a team arising in a participation experience at Complexity Weekend, or it's a Complexity Weekend cohort. Right now, the September 23 to 25 weekend is upcoming, and it is open registration for participants and facilitators. And I actually wanted to head over to complexityweekend.com to show everyone how to RSVP exactly. So here is the Complexity Weekend website. I will just recrop some things. So if you go to the Complexity Weekend website, on the top right, you can either sign in or sign up. So here I'll sign in, but if you are making an account for the first time, you could sign up. Once you log in, that's going to be using your email address, and that's going to be connected to your unique user name, which is like an identity string. And it's going to bring you to this user portal page. And the first question is, will you be able to participate during the September 23 to 25 weekend cohort? All you have to do is click yes. So it's a one question RSVP for participating in this September weekend. It's the first time we've done the RSVP this way. And then you'll find a lot more information that you can provide on your sector, on your background, how you heard about Complexity Weekend, how you express or describe complexity, what kinds of familiarities and interests you have in the community. And so this is going to be hopefully a major improvement over filling out forms for a lot of reasons. And so again, just on the top right of complexityweekend.com, make an account or log in. You're going to go to the questionnaire and just click yes for I do want to participate in that weekend. And that'll be all you need to participate. Back to the slides. Okay, another way that we can represent Complexity Weekend in terms of roles and role-based perspectives is as a structure of interacting roles and parts. Sorry about moving the image. The biggest circle here is participants, because everybody is a participant while we're here. And we also have some event-specific roles and entryways for people to get involved. So the entryways of getting involved on the bottom right side are the monthly heartbeats, which you're at right now, as well as the biannual weekend cohorts, like we just looked at how to RSVP on the website. And both of these are great on-ramps, and do both if you can. The events are organized and facilitated by the event-specific organizers and facilitators. Organizers are those who are coordinating the emailing and the acquisition of facilitators, the confirmation and the questions of participants, and so on. And organizers and facilitators are wholly participants. So if you're ever interested to facilitate or organize with us, it's absolutely an opportunity. Associates and supporters are those who provide financial and non-financial assistance, like training and software access and so on, that supports the sustainability of the community. And then we have different kinds of teams forming inside of CW, on the interfaces, on the outside of CW. And we'll talk more about teams in the weekend than in the heartbeat per se, but in the teams committee, we have a lot of really exciting developments there. With Jessica and some other participants, we've been structuring something that's going to be hopefully very clear and exciting for the September weekend. And committees are a special kind of team. Committees, just like all teams that we encourage, are learning and applying complexity. And committees are learning and applying complexity with a system of interest that is some aspect of the Complexity Weekend experience. So here is a list of the committees, and they're not all active in the same ways, but here are the committee threads. We have DAO, looking at the Web3 and distributed autonomous organization aspect, as well as .tech, which includes some website and some personnel management, CRM type tasks, wiki and knowledge management, placemaking, teams, legal, art, finances, outreach, onboarding, and facilitators and organizers. So for those who would like to join a complexity team, we hold the space open and try to provide opportunities and pathways for those who have an idea that they'd like to seed the team for, or again, a team idea that they're bringing from the outside. And also these are teams that have regular meeting schedules, will have documented notes, will focus on providing a service to Complexity Weekend, and also being rewarding and an educational experience for the participants and an opportunity to serve and learn as well. So committees are a great way to get involved with Complexity Weekend on a slightly more regular or on an organizational note. And big appreciation for a lot of the active committees right now, especially the tech, placemaking, legal, outreach, and of course, facilitators and organizers. Looking ahead to some of our events, we have today, or now, the July 2022 Heartbeat. Then we'll have one more Heartbeat before the September weekend. That'll be on the weekend of August 27th to 28th. And this is the weekend when the pre-weekend for September is going to kick off. So the pre-weekend period for the September weekend cohort is going to be from the end of August for about 24 days. Then we'll have 1, 2, 3 more Heartbeats in October, November, and December 2022. And that'll be our activities for 22. And especially during these last 3, we're going to be looking for a lot of community feedback and input around the calendar and the schedule for 2023 as we continue to plan through Deep Time. In live streams and in multiple places, it's so important to take a breath, take a step back, and think about some of these bigger aspects, like what brings us all together here at Complexity Weekend, what is our collective purpose, what are our core values, and how do we participate? What are our participation guidelines? And for that, we can look to our values, which are a document that we collaboratively created over the past years and recently moved to a Coda page. I've just posted this link that we're in right now to the YouTube live chat. And with others on the stream, it's always awesome to hear their notes and reflections and what parts of what others have written are really standing out to them, and also add a new layer to the way that they're seeing or thinking about the values. But just to go over the cliff notes here, the Complexity Weekend mission is to learn complexity science by doing, to serve through deep time, and to include to innovate. Our purpose is to establish a deep time community, to grow our network, and to apply complexity while we learn by doing. We have a list of values here, which you can look more through and also see notes upon. But the first value that overarches and speaks to so many of these other values is that Complexity Weekend is itself a complex system. And that is this infinite game that also keeps so many of these other aspects in mind as we work together on this multi-scale complexity journey, like the activity and the basis of action in education, edu-action, like teamwork making the dream work, participation means accessibility and inclusion for all, respect is key, no side doors, get out of the building, stakeholder input is key, drawing inspiration from the values and the ways of other communities, and reach out on the edges and stay involved. And also on that page, you'll see some organizational alignments and learn about in progress, completed, and proposed ways that Complexity Weekend is taking feedback into account and being that complex system by aligning through time in our ecosystem. And if you go to the More page, you'll see participation guidelines. And if you have any questions about these, again, read through them or ask somebody with familiarity and let us know if you have any questions. I think today the participation guideline I'll highlight is full participation. Participate fully, whatever this means for you. So whatever your schedule is, whether you're going to be for the full heartbeat intervals or just one of them, or dropping in and out, just on audio, just listening, whatever participation looks like for you, we want to scaffold and meet you there. So Hope that everybody who's listening and who will be re-listening and joining can see how this is going to apply in their own complex settings and feel included at Complexity Weekend. All right, back to the slides. Okay, second part of the live stream. We're going to provide some details on the heartbeat shortly, and then move for about 35 minutes to close out the hour in an interactive Jamboard that will be seating with some nice illustrations and some art that's been provided. So we are in the July 2022 heartbeat, and we, in the outreach committee, termed it the summer flavors of complexity. We have several excellent facilitators, and the way that you can check out the program is by going to this link that's provided here. And it's going to be the homepage of Complexity Weekend, that same coda that we've been looking at. And if you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see the program. So we're here right now in the live stream at 12 UTC, and this is the YouTube link that we're at. Whoa, fractals. Then, following this live stream, the rest of the sessions are going to be in the Gather Atrium. You can go into the Gather Atrium anytime, before, during, after, to test your audio visual, get familiar with the context, and just see if there's anyone else who you bump into. We're going to, at 13 UTC on today, the 30th, feature a facilitated session. This is just right after the live stream ends. We'll go right over to Gather and feature a session, Guided Explorations of a Space of Questions, with Sasha and Octopus. So if you want to learn more about the facilitators, you can click on the facilitator info, and you can see information about our facilitators. And if you go to session description, you can see a description of the session. So our goal is to examine existing tools and frameworks related to questions and develop new mental models as needed. Super cool. Following facilitated sessions, we'll have one-on-one sessions and spotlight talks. So one-on-one sessions are opportunities for those who are there to pair off in one-on-one unstructured conversations. It's just an awesome time to reach out on the edges, connect with other participants, connect with somebody new, somebody you haven't spoken to in a while. And spotlight talks are 5 minutes or less, where people share a project, an idea, an opportunity, all these kinds of things that they're excited about. And in the fourth hour of the first interval, Moses Sam Paul will be leading a session, Building Sustainable DAOs. And there's more description of the facilitated session there. In the second interval of the heartbeat, it'll open with a one-on-one session, followed by a similar version of the facilitated session by Sasha. And of course, facilitated sessions, in contrast with like a lecture or a presentation, they're so different depending on who's there. So it's one really special thing about the online setting that we're in, and the emphasis on the interactive facilitation, which is that some facilitators just come with an intention or with a few questions. And with that, there's this emergence, and participants really do learn complexity by being in that space and seeing how emergence happens. Followed by spotlight talks, and the fourth hour of the first interval is just going to be kind of a chill time for those who want to connect, co-work, and explore complexity. Different heartbeats. We have different amounts of facilitated sessions and co-working, collaborative drawing sessions, and so on. This is what the July program looks like. All right. This heartbeat was organized by myself as well as by Yana. So Yana, thanks so much, as always, for your excellent co-organization. We have fun and we chill organizing the heartbeat. It's truly a low stress and fun way to be involved in complexity. If you're interested at all in complexity and organizational design, communication, participation, and inclusion, These are all really important perspectives that we would welcome in our co-organizing teams. So email us or get in contact with me or with Complexity Weekend if you'd like to co-organize. And we have these drop-in meetings. It'll be a few hours per month or less with zero to small amount of asynchronous tasks, truly just being there and giving your perspective on organizing and seeing where you can chip in is going to be doing a lot for those who see that as an opportunity. So whether you've organized in your own professional or educational context, we encourage people to get involved with facilitating as well as with organizing. A note on the platform, after this live stream, the rest of the interactive sessions are going to be in Gather. And again, you can go to that Gather link anytime. Play around with Gather and figure out how to mute and unmute, how to share your screen if that's relevant, how to walk around the space with the arrow keys, and also check out the different features like the chat and the settings. So best way to figure out Gather is to jump in there and we'll meet you there. If you'd like to support Complexity Weekend in any way, it would be greatly appreciated. The most important thing is your participation and your feedback and your word of mouth recommendations as we grow our community of practice. Additionally, as mentioned, everyone is welcome to join committees as well as to get involved with co-organizing. Also, there's a PayPal link provided here, and get in touch with us if you'd like to learn more about providing financial support. And what we use that financial support is to fund events like Heartbeats and the weekend itself, including the Gather bandwidth, the honorariums for facilitators, and we'd like to be exploring directions like scholarships and micro grants for teams. So those are some of the ways you can support Complexity Weekend. Now, let's head over to the Jamboard. So I have posted the Jamboard link in the YouTube live chat, and I'll repost it now. So I'll repost it, and the Jamboard link is there. And I will just give a few seconds for people to join in while I crop the image. All right, so this is an interactive Jamboard, just to familiarize those with the tools. If you're watching on the live stream, that's great. If you head over to the link, you can get interactive. And so I would welcome all those who are watching to participate if they feel like it. Otherwise, it'll get a little lonely down here. On the left bar, there are different tools. You can add a sticky note and then move them around as well as resize them. You can add images. So if you'd like to bring an image that you found online or something you've created in, you can add shapes. You can have a transient laser if you'd like to just call people's attention to something. And there's other tools too, like a pen. At the top bar, you can see the slides or the jams, not sure what they're called. And so to move to the next slide, nice. Already seeing some drawing stuff happen. Let's go to the second slide and begin here with something modified from our blank page. Sometimes we've begun the Jamboards with the blank slate and use that as kind of our seed context. And today Yana had created this image. So I wanted to use their image and start with this as like the conceptual seed in our joint space. So while people are heading over to this second slide, feel free to add any words or shapes or symbols while we open and ask questions like, what are we seeing? How is this related to complexity? What is complexity? How does it relate to fractals? And I'll start adding some possible labels too, just one labeling set. And this is where Yana and I were ideating on this. I'm not sure if this was exactly what we had been talking about, but in the spirit of. Great question. Thanks for asking, what is deep time? Let's address it in the context of what we're seeing here. Thanks everyone for these great questions. There'll be a lot we can discuss when we're working this way. So first, just the one discussion that Yana and I had about how this fractal tree applies to complexity, and then we can approach some of these other excellent questions. I always think about what Sean, another co-organizer, brings with his focus on how complexity, yes, is finding the patterns across systems and the patterns across complex phenomena, and it's also realized in the particulars. And so a fractal tree here is linking together these multiple scales of our community of practice. Great. Going in the perfect direction with the deep and the shallow time. Like there are deep roots, there are shallow roots. There's leaves on the edges with the small scale, and there are the deeper and slower rhythms at the larger scale. And so we had a few different visual and conceptual metaphors like nested circles and fractal trees to reflect how our complexity journey, it's not full-time in Complexity Weekend. In some senses, even if one person were to go to both of the weekend cohorts and all 10 heartbeats and go to every session, that would still only be a relatively small fraction of your year. And so what is it that is filling in and contextualizing? And so how do we think about these small actions and the ways that small steps that individuals take link together into broader levels? So let's kind of hinge from there into this question about time. So deep time, also just speaking off the cuff at a early morning hour. So of course, this is for others to continue to be exploring and adding synchronously and asynchronously too. Just want to kind of like highlight this question and allow others to also consider it, because these are such important questions and there's no single linear answer that anyone can provide on them. Deep time, as we've been using and exploring it in Complexity Weekend, is taking a long-term perspective and building through the deep future and looking towards a time that is at a time scale above the decade. And these are like nested temporal scales, like seconds within minutes, minutes within hours, and so on. And so we have deep time as our community's focus because within the year, we have certain rhythms of the heartbeats and of the weekends, and deep time is what connects those years together into this much broader and slower tapestry. And that's the unfolding of ourselves, our multi-scale selves, through time that isn't just the moment to moment or even the year to year. If there's deep time, is there also shallow time? Why not? This kind of makes me think about like a deep ocean being made by many thin layers of water. And without getting into the holism and reductionism question too much, somebody could say, well, that ocean's not deep. It's just consisting of a lot of thin layers. It's just simply a lot of thin layers. It's not deep. And maybe there's a little bit of an analogy there. Oh, awesome. Taking a long-term perspective and building through the long-term perspective. Deep time is our community's focus of rhythm of heartbeats. Deep time is what connects that time together. Thanks a lot for whomever had shared this. That's really a nice way to put it. I see like a... There's the boat sailing through deep time, trim tabbing through deep time. It just goes deeper and deeper. Let's look at bridging from this deep time area into some of these questions on the bottom left. So here, some people have written, how do individual practices transform the community as a whole? And how does the community culture transform individuals? Awesome. I'm going to add a little pen for a note. This, again, is an area for not just many people to consider and reflect on, but for us to enact and do and realize. But can give some preliminary thoughts on it. This dyad of questions reminds me of the complexity ideas of bottom-up and top-down causation. And the top and the bottom and the spatial metaphor, it could be in and out. It could be different ways of framing it. But this question on the top here, how do individual practices transform the community as a whole, is like, how does what happens in the leaf influence the tree? How does what happens in that tree influence the ecosystem or the bioregion? How does what happen in that region propagate and influence deeper and larger and slower systems? And so that can be aligned with bottom-up influence or bottom-up causation. How does what one organ in the body, like the pancreas, how does what it do influence the bigger system? Well, it can secrete hormones, or it can be in physiological feedback loops. And then the other side of that question, or another cousin, is how does the community culture transform individuals? So how does the bioregion influence that tree? And how does the tree's condition influence the leaf? How does the leaf's situation influence the cell? And so on. So bottom-up and top-down causation, or tracing those processes in multi-scale systems, is one of the core practices of complexity, because it helps us think about the subunits that constitute and compose larger systems, and it helps us see systems of interest in their ecological context. And there's material and informational and causal exchange happening from a given system of interest upwards, again, into the slower, the deeper, and the longer scales, as well as internally into those faster and smaller scales. And certain tools like multi-scale analysis or like agent-based modeling, different things that might be described as scale-free or scale-friendly tools, help us connect those dots and give an integrated understanding of the system. Even if we don't have every single piece of empirical data, we didn't measure every single leaf, we don't have feedback from every single person, but we can still have a systems diagram and an approach that helps us contextualize this. So now to think about going from the more general complexity ideas like top-down and bottom-up causation and the tools that we might use and the frameworks we might use to frame that, how does this play out in the community context? So how does what one person does, how can a community be figured such that that one voice speaking up in a spotlight talk, or the one question somebody asks to the email address, or that one facilitated session of the participant who steps up and tries something new, or that one person who wants to co-organize an event, how can those individual practices, getting to the ultra micro, how can that one person's choice of wording in that email be a bifurcation point or be a change maker or a leverage point for a community? And then again, keeping with the community context and thinking about the other direction there, how does the community culture transform individuals? And what is the community culture? Is it just other people? Is it the stigmergic environmental modifications, like the pages and what we've been looking at with the slides and the coda, which represent the modification of many people over years? What happens when somebody says, today I'm going to keep this participation guideline in mind, and I'm going to keep it in mind even after the heartbeat ends. I'm going to keep thinking about embrace technology, but know its limits, or we're all complex systems. I'm going to keep that in mind after the heartbeat ends. So how can what happens inside of the community, oh, and also please, people can continue to modify and, you can rotate things and we can do fun stuff and start to like explore. How does what happens in the scaffolding, in the context of community, yes, Complexity Weekend, but again, seeing that as just the community that today and right now, we all have one foot of our attention in, but tomorrow it'll be a different setting for you and for me. And then we can ask these same questions about like, how do our practices influence our professional setting or our educational setting? And then how are we being transformed and co-developing and co-creating? And what kinds of multi-scale systems feel constricting? Where do we feel like our transformation and development is being hampered? Where do we feel like the affordances and the opportunities that we have at the individual scale, where do we feel like those are going to be welcomed and making a value aligned impact? Let's look at some of these other awesome comments. So how does the community culture influence individuals? Thanks, very related to this question. Bottom up and top down causation and how the leaf influences the tree. Okay, in orange. Inside out and outside in expression of individuals and environment. How do our internal sensory experiences express? And how does that expression transform the environment and people around us? Thanks, great question. If you're feeling like you have some thoughts, please add a slide or add some post-its or words or shapes or anything. This question is pointing towards, for me, how participation is based upon this exchange across the interface of individuality, and that, yes, can be zoomed out into the complexity, multi-scale interface Markov blanket situation. But we can just think about this as our bodily and our peripersonal interfaces. So when you're watching the live stream, you're receiving an audio and or a visual input. And so right from the very beginnings of thinking about participation, we have like sensory and cognitive accessibility. If there were communication in a wavelength, visually or auditorily or linguistically, that could not resonate with a person, they are not going to receive that communication, and they cannot be included in participation that way. So I really like this framing of like, instead of just the community being this teapot where people just have to brew and just sit there, the sensory perspective that this post-it note is calling our attention to is reminding of the embodied and the sensory basis for participating. And well, what happens when the context and the community provide those sensations to the individuals? So it says that from those internal sensory experiences, then we make expressions. We make facial expressions. We make verbal expressions. We express ourselves in the Jamboard. We dance and gather. We draw something on paper that people might not see online. And so we make expressions. What are those expressions? And again, how does this relate to the other side of accessibility, which is completing that loop from community to individual and back? Just being plugged in to the download is only one direction. That's the perception. And I think, again, this comment's insightful because it is closing the loop with the way that the expressions of participants in very diverse contexts and time zones and so on, their expressions transform the environment. If your internal sensory experience is a question and you write that question in our shared environment right here, it's going to modify the sensory experiences of others, and that will shape their responses. And that's kind of like, it's so related to complexity ideas of emergence and of multi-entity systems and bifurcation points. Because it is really top down, because it is really top down or bottom up, so whichever spatial direction, I guess, which has empirical and aristocratic value systems embedded in it, such as the scientist, the head, tells the people at the bottom working on the ground what to do. But instead, we can appreciate the shared bodily experience and needs we have in our bodies. Thanks, that's really insightful. It reminds me of an interesting debate, not actually occurring in the complexity context, but in my area of background in evolutionary biology. And it turns out that certain areas of biologists and ecologists, they when they're doing a phylogeny, or like a tree representing the relationships of species, sometimes people have it like with the leaves at the top, like this. Other times there's leaves going down. Other times it is implicitly embodying like a cultural time concept. For example, with the more recent species being on the right, and then the past being on the left. And people used to debate how to, or I guess maybe they still do, which one of those directions is like the right way to do a phylogenetic tree, a species tree. But this comment But instead we can appreciate the shared bodily experiences and needs we have in our bodies. Thanks. Yeah, that's very interesting. That ties to the participation guidelines of like full participation, whatever that means for you. If it's overwhelming to be meeting people and having your video off and taking 20 minutes off every hour is what showing up means for you, that is great. So hopefully we can respect each other's cognitive and bodily experiences and our similarities and differences by starting with the actual. And just to kind of close this thread, and then we can go to another question, and then we'll go to another slide for the last 15 minutes. This is almost like, I don't know what is at the center here. Maybe this is like the participant or the system of interest or something. But this is like where we move beyond the top and the bottom and who's telling whom to do what. What does that look like when there are rivers leading in that bottleneck through the individual and the now, and rivers also leading out and leading out of leading out? How do we grow in community? Awesome question. So I think the one way that we can take this question and kind of run with it in the last 10 minutes of the live stream, let's all go to slide 3. So I'm going to add this person's question, how do we grow in community, and have this as kind of like an orienting poll. So please head over to slide 3, and we will be continuing this exploration. I wanted to come to slide 3 because Yana made this awesome word cloud. And if you're there, Yana, do feel free to add any comments like on what the context of the words were, but they're words, and we can see multiple like languages and things, and we'll go in a little bit deeper. They're words that participants have provided in free response sections, like regarding what they're interested in and how they view complexity. And a few complexity ideas, like every word cloud, we kind of meme because first, there's a few common terms that are larger. Yes, also it relates to how you graphically visualize the word cloud. But there's a few terms that are larger, and those are like the big continents of complexity terms that help us find alignment, like feedback loops and dynamical systems and so on. Yeah, awesome. And so those are like shared terms that give us continuity with the past and also provide, again, broad, relevant terms to talk about phase transitions and so on. Great. Yes. What is complexity to you, I guess, was the question that was seeding these words. And so we have, again, those few main, larger, more common terms. If you just said, hey, everyone, think of 5 musicians. There's going to be some that come up in multiple lists, but then there's going to be this long tail of musicians that have maybe only one person bringing them up. And that is where that one voice matters. And then there's the musicians where 2 people bring them up. And then that's like a possible similarity. And so in that way, we can see our similarities, which are some, in our differences, which are also certainly some. Both of similarity and differences in how we answer a question can be like seen as opportunities for us to grow and connect in relationships. Like, oh, you are interested in self-organization, so am I. Or, self-organization, what does that mean? I've actually not been too familiar with it. And so like looking through these terms, people with a lot of complexity experience and people who are just beginning their complexity journey Like every time I see a word cloud from our community, there's words that are new, and certainly even on the words that aren't new, I know that there's like new perspectives on it. So that's one of the like kind of word cloud themes, is that like there's some terms that are shared depending on the word cloud and how we construct it and so on. And then there's this long tail of uniqueness. And then a second word cloud idea is that like you have to zoom in to complexity because there's so much there, from prevalent knowledge. There's just so much that it at the zoomed out level, you see the continents, and that's fine. But also it's about the leaves that make that forest green so that that one pixel is green from 30,000 feet. And this is like zooming into community. This is where we actually like go to the edges, and it is very rhizomatic, very like connected and mycelial, because we're not just looking for the overview always. The overview provides the sense-making context, but then it's the zooming in and relating on the edges where we build these really deep relationships that structure community. So how do we grow in community? I guess for the last like 8 or 10 minutes of the live stream, let's think about that. Like, how do we... Who wants a t-shirt with this complexity word cloud? Awesome. What objects represent complexity? How do we grow in community? I'm really looking forward to the session by Sasha and Octopus in 10 minutes on questions, because I know they've been thinking so creatively about questions and frameworks for questions. Like looking at how do we grow, I think, how do we grow outside of community? What would it look like to somehow be growing outside of a community context? Or how do we grow in this community in contrast with like an alternate future of it or a different community? This is incredible Jamboard skills. Never, I don't think we've seen anything like this in terms of the graphical realism. What, when we talk about a plant growing, we might be talking about its height. We might be talking about the taproot, so we don't necessarily see it growing taller above ground, but we see it becoming deeper enmeshed with the ground, with its roots or with its structuring of energy. So that's for the plants. So how do we grow? Does that mean that we have updated our cognitive model, that we've learned? Is learning growing? Is doing growing? Remembering? Changing? Are we talking about a physical growth? And in what ways might be meaning this? Are we thinking about network growth? And like we, again, in that multi-scale context, I'll bring one of our trees back in. Where is the growth and how? There's just so many fun ideas and spaceships flying around. We have some more keywords added. Nonlinear behavior, bifurcation, transmedia. Very interesting. This question, though, of how we grow in community is really essential, not just as our community grows or as we grow in community, we hope, But as those layers from what we explored on the previous slide are enmeshed, how can somebody grow in a top-down community context that is not advocating or permitting that kind of growth? Or how can somebody grow in certain ways best when there is a niche that supports their growth? What is that kind of niche? What is that kind of growth? What is that kind of individual? Multimodal? Arborescence? That's the tree, the vegetative tree part. Let's zoom in on these graphics. Okay, we see what appears to be a human. This is looking like a spaceship with 3 eyes. Looks like a spider. So in our closing minutes before we end the live stream and head over to gather for the rest of the interval and the rest of the sessions, just wanted to close by noting, and hopefully it's not just something that is verbally rehearsed, but something that we've co-enacted and will continue to co-enact, that by providing context for those who are joining Complexity Weekend for the first time today, literally first time in this live stream, or those who have been here for a long, long time, we can have an accessible discussion that connects our embodied experiences and complexity terms like bottom and top causative processes, and connect that to our values like deep time, like recognizing the diversity of our participants and bringing a yes and perspective. It ain't easy to draw with a mouse. Yeah, right. I know that's also how I feel. And then to go from the ideas and the particulars and the embodiment of community to see what other participants have provided for us, which are like these amazing reflections, not censored, not, oh, I'm not an expert on complexity, so I'm not going to write it, or it's not in English, so I'm not going to write it. Like, by this kind of authentic sharing and participation, we make something that is so much bigger than just our micro actions. So in that way, I think we do see how individual practices transform the community as a whole. And this live stream is just the tip of the iceberg, because now we're about to go into the water. We're about to actually make that interaction happen. So thanks everybody for watching the live stream. Head over to the Gather Atrium. You'll find the link in the presentation in the live chat where there's the program, or it's in the calendar event that you've been added to, or it's in the same link that all the heartbeats have always been in. So head over to the Gather Atrium, and in just a few minutes, we will begin with Sasha and Octopus's session. So thanks everybody for this awesome live stream. Really appreciated the contributions on the Jamboard, and see you all quite soon. Goodbye.